Shabbat Shalom,
Shabbat Shalom.
which is peace on Yahweh's holy Sabbath day. Welcome to another holy convocation that Yahweh has enjoined unto us here in Atlanta, Georgia. As we have just come off of this so-called Halloween, we know that right here in Atlanta, they put on the news about a little girl that was hit by a car and was killed. And, it was they were showing the family grieving. It's always something foul that happens on that night. And people just don't want to deal with the foulness of the whole institution of Halloween. They believe that it's just, a coincidence that bad things happen on that night. But what has happened is we have taken on all of these ways of the heathen. And what happened, the heathen has input all of their paganistic activities and pushed it into what they call Christianity. And people believe that these things are okay to do, and they don't understand that they are upsetting their Creator when they take part in all of these things. But before we get started, brother, would you entreat the angel that stands at the door to come in and sup with us and us with him, that we may make this a holy convocation?
1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 through 11. But the end of all things is at hand. Be you therefore sober, and watch unto prayer. And above all things have fervent love among yourselves, for love shall cover the multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. As every man has received the gift, even so minister the same one to another as good stewards of the manifold grace of Elohim. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of Elohim. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which Elohim giveth, that Elohim in all things may be glorified through Yahshua the Mashiach, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 29 through chapter 5 and verse 4. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of Elohim, whereby you are sealed unto the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be you kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as Elohim for Yahshua's sake has forgiven you. Be you therefore followers of Elohim as their children, and walk in love, as the Mashiach also have loved us, and has given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to Elohim for a sweet-smelling savor. But fornication, and all uncleanness, or covetousness, let it not be what's named among you, as becometh saints. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Keep your foot when you go to the house of Elohim, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with your mouth, and let not your heart be hasty to utter anything before Elohim, for Elohim is in heaven, and you upon earth. Therefore let your words be few. Exodus chapter 23, verses 20 and 21. Behold, I send an angel before you, to keep you in the way, and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him, and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Revelations chapter 3, verses 20 through 22. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice, and open the door, I will come into him, and will sup with him, and he with me. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame, and am sat down with my Father in his throne. He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches.
All right. Now, we as the saints of Yahweh have just had to endure the majority of today's society openly partaking in the worship of the dead. This day is commonly known as Halloween or All Hallows Eve. It was traditionally believed by the pagans that the souls of the departed wandered the earth until All Saints' Day, and All Hallows Eve provided one last chance for the dead to gain vengeance on their enemies before moving to the next world. In order to avoid being recognized by any soul that might be seeking vengeance, people wore masks or costumes to disguise their identities. This day was marked by bonfires and food offerings left out for the dead. Trick-or-treating comes from kids who would darken their faces with the ashes of the bonfire and would threaten mischief if they didn't get what they wanted. Today, people are not disguising themselves from the dead. They are dressing up like the dead and receiving the offerings for the dead in the form of candy. In parts of England, Belgium, Germany, Austria, and Italy, groups of poor people, often children, would go door to door during Hallow Mass. Listen to the wording, Hallow Mass, collecting soul cakes as a means of praying for souls in purgatory. All of these things add up to be the direct worship of Satan. Now, when we deal with, of course, this term of purgatory, you won't find that in this book. What that is supposed to be a middle point between moving on from one world to the next. So as we read earlier, when it was talking about before they moved on to the next world, this purgatory was so-called this middle place of punishment, a holding cell, if you will, before someone moved on. There's several things that we have to keep in mind as we go forward with today's sermon. We have to remember when there were enormous amounts of arson fires on Halloween night. Now, remember, in the history of it, it says that it was marked by bonfires. Remember the movie The Crow? And they were talking about All Hallows Eve night, and they would set these big fires. Understand, Halloween comes from this original tradition. They would always set bonfires. So when the arsonists go to burn things down on Halloween night, you know, don't get mad at them. They're actually keeping the tradition the correct way. They're doing it the way it was set up. Also remember that this became a festival for all, including kids. We must remember that Jeremiah 7 and Jeremiah 44 speaks about the children gathering wood and the fathers kindling the fire and the women kneading their dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven and to pour out drink offerings unto other gods that they may provoke Yahweh to anger. So people are not understanding that they are provoking Yahweh to anger by the keeping of these things. We now just see it as some festival and not the worship of another God. And also keep in mind that people are the change of, you have the original part of disguising themselves so they would not be recognized by the souls who are walking the earth. Then you have the whole thing. Every year they get ready to talk about Halloween or All Hallows Eve. They show Michael Jackson Thriller video. And within this video, there are people crawling out of their graves. So keep in mind that the costumes are not disguising the people. The costumes are now, they are portraying the dead people that came out of the grave. Now, that is significant, and you're going to figure out why as we go along. Let's open up today's sermon in Leviticus chapter 21 and verses 1 through 12. And today's sermon is entitled All Hallows Eve. All Hallows Eve. Now, people believe, and this is one of those things that people believe that they can. The glorious lie is that these things have been conquered for Christ. So we're going to read some things so we can have this, so you can understand this play on wording. But All Hallows Eve, the church have their own, and they call it Hallelujah Night. Okay, so they're going to do the same things, but they're going to do it in the church, which really is a lot more fitting than one would actually believe. But we'll figure that out as we go along. Leviticus chapter 21, and we're going to read verses 1 through 12.
And Yahweh said unto Moshe, Speak unto the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say unto them, There shall none be defiled for the dead among his people, but for his kin that is near unto him, that is, for his mother, and for his father, and for his son, and for his daughter, and for his brother.
Right, but we have a complete festival honoring the dead on this day. Okay, go ahead.
And for his sister, a virgin that is near unto him, which hath had no husband, for her may he be defiled. But he shall not defile himself, being a chief man among his people, to profane himself. They shall not make baldness upon their head, neither shall they shave off the corner of their beard, nor make any cuttings in their flesh. They shall be holy unto their Elohim, and not profane the name of their Elohim. For the offerings of Yahweh made by fire, and the bread of their Elohim they do offer, therefore they shall be holy. They shall not take a wife that is a whore or profane, neither shall they take a woman put away from her husband, for he is holy unto his Elohim.
Right, and this whole thing for a holy man to marry a woman that decides not to walk in holiness, it has a tendency to work both ways, that holiness ends up taking a step down. So Yahweh ordained that we have to deal with things in the rightful manner. This is why time and time again, as you read, the fathers say, hey, don't marry now one of these women around here. Go over there and get one of them women from your father's family, from your mother's family. Go over there and get one of them. Don't marry now one of these women. See, because it was said these women gonna cause you problems. But see, we don't think about all of that. We just jump into something and then look at all the collateral damage after that. See, half the time we don't know who we marrying anyway. We think we do. Go ahead.
Verse 8, You shall sanctify him therefore, for he offered the bread of your Elohim. He shall be holy unto you, for I, Yahweh, which sanctify you, am holy. And the daughter of any priest, if she profane herself by playing the whore, she profaneth her father. She shall be burnt with fire. And he that is the high priest among his brethren, upon whose head the anointing oil was poured, and that is consecrated to put on the garments, shall not uncover his head, nor render his clothes. Neither shall he go into any dead body, nor defile himself for his father or for his mother. Neither shall he go out of the sanctuary, nor profane the sanctuary of his Elohim, for the crown of the anointing oil of his Elohim is upon him. I am Yahweh.
All right, now consider these things about being defiled for the dead, and consider that in this day and time, funerals are done in the church, and they bring the dead body inside the church. Consider that. See? And people believe that everything has been conquered for Christ, and they can do whatever they want to do. We're going to see what Christ has to say and what Yahweh has to say concerning those things. Deuteronomy chapter 26, and we're going to read verses 12 through 14. So we're going to just set some groundwork here on what Yahweh has as foul and what things he holds as holy. And we're used to hearing the term holy, but I want to read a few things so you can hear the word play in some of these things. Deuteronomy chapter 26, and we're going to read verses 12 through 14.
Verse 12. When you have made an end of tithing all the tithes of your increase, the third year.
Now, you know how many people have no idea that there's a year of tithing, that you're actually supposed to store up things? And yeah, we can't say jack, so that ain't gonna work for us. But it's amazing that the people who push tithing, that when you talk to the people who do it, they don't even say, well, you know what, I'm going to give this because I can't store it up. They've never even heard of that. Right. Go ahead.
Which is the year of tithing, and has given it unto the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, they that may eat within your gates and be filled.
Right. But what ends up happening with that tithe is people end up buying fancy cars, helicopters, planes, and all of those things, and people love to have it so. Go ahead.
Then you shall say before Yahweh your Elohim, I have brought away the hallowed things out of mine house.
That's the word. Okay. All Hallows Eve. It says, now it's talking about how this tithe is what Yahweh has given unto the Levites, unto the priests. But then it says, then you shall say before Yahweh your Elohim, I have brought away all the hallowed things out of my house. So hallowed means sacred. So we're dealing with the Day of the Dead. Yahweh has already said that those things are unclean. But now we got All Hallows Eve, so they're holding death sacred. Okay, let's keep going.
And also have given them unto the Levite, and unto the stranger, to the fatherless, and to the widow, according to all your commandments which you have commanded me. I have not transgressed your commandments, neither have I forgotten them. I have not eaten therefore in my mourning, neither have I taken away aught thereof for any unclean use, nor given aught thereof for the dead.
Right, I have not given any sacrifices for the dead. See? People don't understand. When somebody shows up at the door with a fake eyeball hanging out their eye and a blood streak going across their neck, and then they show up to the door with a bag, then people give them offerings. See, those are offerings for the dead. Okay? But we think it's cute. Go ahead.
But I have hearkened unto the voice of Yahweh my Elohim, and have done according to all that you have commanded me.
All right, now let's go to Numbers chapter 6. That's just back one chapter. One book, I mean. Go back one book. Numbers chapter 6. And we're going to start that at verse 1.
And Yahweh spake unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When either man or woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto Yahweh, he shall separate himself from wine and strong drink, and shall drink no vinegar of wine, or vinegar of strong drink, neither shall he drink any liquor of grapes, nor eat moist grapes, or dry.
Now, people believe that they're being extremely holy because, see, they say, well, I don't do any of these things. That's a Nazarite vow, that he's not going to drink any vinegar of wine, any vinegar of strong drink, neither shall he drink any liquor. See? But that's a vow. But people want to deal with that, well, I'm extra holy. You know? So they being ignorant of Elohim's righteousness and going about to set their own, when people do what they call communion, they don't have wine. Wine is the blood, okay? But they won't have wine because they have to have their own holiness. See? So if wine is his blood and you say, well, grape juice is the same, no, you got fake blood. That's fake blood. Then he says that this unleavened bread is my body. But they have crackers that have leaven in them. So you got, and leaven represents sin. So you got a sinful cracker and some fake blood. Right. But we believe we in sport. See, he says, as often as you will, do this in remembrance of me. He already had a festival set up for that. It's called Passover. But we have allowed the heathen to ordain a once a month thing that they call communion. Where'd that come from? It didn't come out of this book. Right. Go ahead.
Verse 4. All the days of his separation shall he eat nothing that is made of the vine tree, from the kernels even to the husk. All the days of the vow of his separation there shall no razor come upon his head, until the days be fulfilled, in the which he separateth himself unto Yahweh. He shall be holy, and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow. All the days that he separated himself unto Yahweh, he shall come at no dead body. He shall not make himself unclean for his father, or for his mother, for his brother, or for his sister, when they die, because the consecration of his Elohim is upon his head.
The consecration of his Elohim is upon his head because of the vow. So now he can't even make himself unclean for those that are close to him because of the vow that he is under. Go ahead.
All the days of his separation he is holy unto Yahweh. And if any man die very suddenly by him, and he had defiled the head of his consecration, then he shall shave his head in the day of his cleansing. On the seventh day shall he shave it.
Right. So on the point that he comes upon the dead body. Now we know that within the resurrection of Christ and the great things that Christ did, he healed people that were dead, and he brought back people that were dead, and he touched those bodies. What people will then use that and say that none of these things are then valid because he did miracles. You also have the very same erroneous teachings that because they went and ate on the Sabbath day, that the Sabbath day is no longer valid. Yet he kept the Sabbath day, and even after the resurrection of Christ, you find Saul, Cephas, the very people that he put into play to lead this gospel, they're still keeping the Sabbath day. They're still keeping holy days. See? But you have people who call themselves religious, they won't keep any of the holy days that are in this book, but they keep All Hallows Eve. Go ahead.
And on the 8th day he shall bring 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, to the priest, to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And the priest shall offer the one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering, and make an atonement for him, for that he sinned by the dead, and shall hallow his head that same day. And he shall consecrate unto Yahweh the days of his separation, and shall bring a lamb of the first year for a trespass offering. But the days that were before shall be lost, because his separation was defiled.
His separation was defiled at that point. Go ahead.
And this is the law of the Nazarite. When the days of his separation are fulfilled, he shall be brought unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and he shall offer his offering unto Yahweh, 1 he-lamb of the first year without blemish for a burnt offering, and 1 ewe lamb of the first year without blemish for a sin offering, and 1 ram without blemish for peace offering.
Now people say, oh, I mean, you know, this stuff, because it's talking about offerings, it has to be totally done away with. You can't deal with any of these things. Let's go to Acts chapter 21.
Now, brother, before we move on, I just had a quick question there. You know, it's interesting that the sin of touching a dead body, he lost all
his holiness. That's the point. That is the point. That at the point he comes in contact with this dead body, all the hair's got to be shaven off. You're starting over. So all of that holiness is now gone. Cut it off, start over. You can't continue after that point within this vow of walking in holiness and being holy unto Yahweh. Doesn't mean he's forever unclean. He just has to start that thing over from scratch. Go ahead, brother.
When the Nazarite touches the dead body, that's defilement. Is it also included the other ways to be defiled, like stepping on a grave or being in a building or tent where a dead person died? Is that all applied to that as well, or is it only just touching the dead
No,
body?
just touching it, because you do those things by chance. You don't know what has been. You touch a dead body, you know you touch a dead body. And see, that's of, your own doing. What somebody else did and what you, walked over. Because believe you me, bro, some people got houses built on top of grave sites and don't have any idea. You think about some of the places that you've gone, and there were like 20 headstones. And then you go, then there are 10 headstones. Did 10 of the people just get up and leave? It was 20 headstones. There's one right on Panola Road that you won't even pay attention to. You'll keep driving by it. It's like this big, and it's headstones all in there. Hey, wait a minute. And only when they cleared it out did you notice it. Man, you know how many years I've gone past that thing, and I didn't know it was there? Did it just pop up? No, them dead people just didn't go over there and just say, I'm going to chill over here. No, that's been there. But then you start counting them headstones. Where they going? Right. Knock down a little bit this year. Knock down a little bit next year. Then they're going to build a building on top of it sooner or later. And people going to go in there and, well, every time I come here, something bad happens. Right. Welcome to the house of the dead. Right. Right. Go ahead.
I just wanted to go back on the shaving of the hair. It's quite interesting. It states that all the hairs of your head are accounted for. But when you even look at the hair, it's the one thing that when you're taking a drug test that they can use against you and go back years and be able to pull up history of you.
Mm-hmm. If the first test, just the urine tests and things like that. But yeah, when they deal with that hair, that stuff is truly in there. And the sad thing about it is the medicines that they prescribe are so full of deep drugs that you're liable to do some things and fail a drug test and understand, like, why I don't use drugs. Yeah. You use the deepest ones on the market. You got them from the pharmacy. You got them from Eckerd. See, what people like to do is say, well, I ain't getting no drugs because I ain't buying from Pookie. Oh, no, you got the worst drugs because you got yours from Walgreens over there. See, Pookie's drugs is cleaner than Walgreens. But see, people feel justified when they get their drugs from a drug store. But it's called a drug store. People say, these ain't drugs per se. Sure they ain't. Believe that if you want to. See? They'll put out some drugs, and 2 months later or 2 years later, they got all these suits about all of the damage that it caused. They knew that when they made it. But you have people that feel justified because they took the drugs that came out of that store instead of the drugs that was sold in front of that store by a street pharmacist. Right. Drugs is drugs. Right. Go ahead.
Acts.
Acts chapter 21. And we're going to read verse 17 through 31.
Verse 17. And when we were come to Jerusalem, the brethren received us gladly. And the day following, Saul went in with us unto James, and all the elders were present.
Now, we are reading out of the book of Acts, which is the first 30 years of the church, so do understand that this is after the birth, death, and resurrection of Christ. So keep that in your mind. Go ahead.
And when he had saluted them, he declared particularly what things Elohim had wrought among the Gentiles by his ministry. And when they heard it, they glorified Yahweh, and said unto him, You seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law?
They believe, and they are zealous of the law. Go ahead.
And they are informed of you, that you teacheth all the Jews which are among the Gentiles.
Which are among, see, you are teaching the Jews that are among the Gentiles. You see? So you see there's a separation, and people want to tell you that it's all the same. So you have this so-called misguided, misnamed African American believing that they're Gentiles, when Genesis 10 tell you who the Gentiles are, and those people come from Europe and Asia. We didn't come from Europe and Asia. So it lets you know that there's a difference between what the Jew has to do and what the Gentile has to do. But if you don't understand that, you are learning, and this is where most of the confusion come from. You have Jews who don't know they're Jews as black people being over congregations, but they learned at a school ran by a Gentile. So the Gentile is misteaching them the word that might even be okay for their people, but not okay for the people that he's teaching. See? Go ahead.
To forsake Moshe, saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the customs.
Now, the thing is, it says, the thing says, and they are informed of you that you teach all the Jews which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moshe, which means forsake the law, saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the custom. Remember this whole thing about these holy days? Those are the customs, okay? So he's saying, oh, no. Now the Gentiles don't have to do that, but I have not taught the Jews that they didn't have to do that. You see? You see the difference? But you don't hear any of that in today's churches. You don't hear any of that between any of the televangelists saying, you don't have to do this, Gentiles. You have to do this, Jews. You don't hear any of that. Right. Go ahead.
What is it therefore? The multitude must needs come together, for they will hear that you are come. Do therefore this that we say to you. We have 4 men which have a vow on them.
All right, and we just read on those things about a vow. Go ahead.
Them take and purify yourself with them, and be at charges with them, that they may shave their heads.
What? Shave their heads? What's going on here? Wait a minute, this is the New Testament, right? I thought all this stuff was nailed to the cross. Right. That's what happened when you go. You ever went to a place and it says authentic Chinese food, and you get there and it's a Mexican, and you said, wait a minute, I know my peoples, and that's a Mexican. That's how's that authentic Chinese food, but there's no Chinaman here. Right. That's what's happening in today's congregations. You have people teaching the word of Yahweh, but they are not authentic. They have no right to teach that word. And then furthermore, they've learned it from people who didn't have the right to teach them. Go ahead.
You know, it's interesting because, like you said, nobody's saying, well, this is for you versus this is for you.
Right.
You know, I just did some classes this week, and this guy is like, this is very important, so I'm there writing this stuff down. Then he turns around and goes, oh, yeah, you people that work for this company, you guys don't have to do this. I'm sitting like, I just wrote all this for nothing. You should have made this clear from the get-go.
Exactly. You have to differentiate which things are important to who. See, all of the things that the priests have to do, the regular person won't have to do all of that. Go ahead.
And all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning you are nothing, but you yourself also walketh orderly and keepeth the law.
That you yourself, now they are talking to brother Paul or Saul. This is the one who was ordained, the only one ordained to teach the Euro-Gentiles. He is, for a lack of a better term, the real father of what they call Christianity. Now, if he walked orderly and keep the law and said he does not teach any Jews against that, he did teach the Euro-Gentiles that they didn't have to do all of those things. Keep reading.
Verse 25. As touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded that they observe no such thing.
You see the difference? He is automatically clarifying that there's a difference between what the Jew has to do and what the Euro-Gentile has to do. So if this is what he taught them, why don't you hear any of that from today's preachers or televangelists? Go ahead.
Save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols, and from blood, and from strangled, and from fornication.
Now we know that they're not doing any of those things. Observe no such thing, save only they keep themselves from things offered to idols. There are idols everywhere, and they love all of them. From blood, they'll tell you that a steak is juicy when it's medium rare. You cut it, and the blood just running out of it. You go to a buffet, and you say, I want a steak well done. Well, you just want the thing burnt then. Well, burn it then. I won't mind how Yahweh told me to eat it. I got to sit there and argue with the man at the buffet because he don't want to cook the steak. Well, you just cooking right all the flavor. That's not flavor, man. That's blood. I'm going to need you to cook my meat. Cut that in the middle. What? Cut it in the middle, man. I want to see if you cooked it all the way through. Right. They think it's strange that you run not to them and do the same riotous things that they do. Something wrong with you. No, we'll see when my big brother Yahshua get here if something wrong with me or if something wrong with you. We'll see. Go ahead.
Then Saul took the men, and the next day purifying himself with them, entered into the temple, to signify the accomplishment of the days of purification, until that an offering should be offered for every one of them.
Uh-huh.
And when the 7 days were almost ended, the Jews which were of Asia, when they saw him in the temple, stirred up all the people, and laid hands on him.
Now you see that it was, and when the 7 days were ended, remember we read the same thing about the Nazarite vow. Remember the shaving of the head. We read the same thing in the law. And we see that this brother is keeping these things accordingly. But he's a Jew. You see that? Go ahead.
Crying out, Men of Israel, help! This is the man that teacheth all men everywhere against the people and the law, and this place, and further brought Greeks also into the temple, and hath polluted this holy place. For they had seen before with him in the city Trophimus, an Ephesian, whom they supposed that Saul had brought into the temple.
Now you see how this is how you know. I mean, this book just explains us from top to bottom. Now they ready to persecute Saul. They said whom they supposed. They ain't seen him take that brother in there. They said he done took this filthy Gentile, and you ain't seen him take nobody nowhere. They suppose. See, that's us. We will persecute on supposing. I suppose I had heard, I had said what somebody else had seen when they had heard what they said they seen by somebody and them. What? So where's the witness? You don't really have one then, do you? Right. Go ahead.
And all the city was moved, and the people ran together. And they took Saul, and drew him out of the temple. And forthwith the doors were shut. And as they went about to kill him, tidings came unto the chief captain of the band, that all Jerusalem was in an uproar.
Right. And consider these things. They went about to kill him. Consider, when you say these words of Christ, man, there'll be people that have gone to church just many, many years, and you start reading Christ's words that are written and read in the New Testament, and watch how they come against you. And you'll find out that there are many antichrists that have been going to church for 20 and 30 years. Many of them. Antichrist. Right. They say that they love the Lord. Mention his words. He said, if you love me, keep my sayings. Mess around and say something. And they don't recognize that it's his words. They'll be ready to string you up. Go ahead.
That's why it's also important that our people understand that we are Jews. You know, less long they think we're Gentiles, but convincing our people, a lot of them, that we are Jews, you know, they can also walk wrong in this word for thinking that, you know, that we're some other people other than who we really are.
Of course, because if you have, you know, when they have, like the brother said, he had a class. When you have a meeting and they have a you know, various different people in there. You have the cleaners, you have, you know, this group, you have that group. They have to specify what belongs to what group. They don't have the executive. They look, I need these toilets clean. Now, if you're an executive, you already know, hey, you can't be told. He's not expecting us to clean these toilets. No, he's talking to them over there. But you have to specify what goes where. So this is why there's so much erroneous biblical knowledge, because it has not been differentiated as who they're talking to. That's one thing you have to always consider when you're reading anything. Who's talking and who are they talking to? Least you get the instruction for somebody else and believe that it's for you. And then you said, well, I had good intentions. That's fine. That's the name of this road right here that leads to the lake of fire. Get on it. Just stay on good intentions until you end up in the fire. Go ahead. Just keep on walking. You'll get there. That's what good intentions lead you to. Go ahead. So you had good intentions, but not the knowledge and understanding of Yahweh, our Elohim. So good intentions mean absolutely nothing when you don't understand the rules. As it is written, ignorance of the law is no excuse. The same thing they do in this country. They don't care that you didn't understand that jaywalking was illegal. If they feel like prosecuting you for jaywalking, you getting a ticket. Simple as that. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. Let's go to Genesis chapter 1. And we're going to read verses 1 through 19. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1 through 19. So we see here that he had to make an outward display. This is Saul, the only apostle who was sent to the Gentiles. Now consider who owns all the seminary schools. Gentiles. Consider the black preachers have learned in seminary schools owned by the Gentiles. He has taught that there's a difference between the Gentile and the Jew, but also taught, he has proclaimed, I have not taught these people against the customs. Those customs, there are 7 days in creation. There are 7 spirits of Yahweh our Elohim, and there are 7 holy days. Most people have never heard anything about these holy days. Most people want to speak in tongues, but speaking in tongues is something that a gift that was given out at one of those holy days that people don't keep, but they still want the product of what was given out at that holy day. Isn't that some of the, is that not the biggest bowl of hypocrisy ever? You want the gift of what was given out that day, but you don't want to keep that day. Right? Go ahead.
You know, it's interesting. You just mentioned seminary school. You know, nowhere in these scriptures do we see where any priest went to any seminary school. You came up by working in that position through the years.
Well, that was their schooling. And when you have the Pharisees, because understand, Saul came up under Gamaliel. He came up under a priest. So that was their school. Understand, it says in Romans 9 verse 4, who are authorized to teach this word, right? So he came up under other Israelites. So then you have Yahshua, who came and picked regular man. That's why they was asking questions, man, hey, man, this dude, that dude's a carpenter. They said, how they have this knowledge being men that were not learned? They didn't go to school with Saul. They didn't go and learn under Gamaliel. And he learned under the Pharisees, which was the strictest sect of those people learning the law. These regular dudes, man, these dudes were fishermen. These were some rough, regular brothers. Right. But you see the difference in how Yahshua do things. He walked alongside you. Come follow me. Oh, them 2 brothers over there? Come follow me. You 2 brothers over there? Come follow me. Right. He ain't choosing none of them priests. The only person that was chosen that went to a school per se was Saul. And he didn't get him until after he died. He didn't choose him while he was living. Saul didn't walk with Yahshua. He came to him in a vision afterward. Right. Go ahead.
I was saying, in today's time, what's the first thing we look at when we decide to go to school for something? How much is it going to pay?
Of course.
So these seminary schools, they got to be something that they know about what it's going to pay.
Well, it becomes a really good thing to put on our resume. And here's the thing. Because, man, we have study Bibles, and the study Bibles tell us that where there's all capital Lord that originally said Yahweh. You think the pastor doesn't know this? He went to seminary school. He knows this. But you know what? It's not taught because ain't no money in it. Right. So that's what rules us, that almighty dollar. Genesis chapter 1, and we're going to read verses 1 through 19.
In the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. And Elohim said, "Let there be light," and there was light.
Right. So the division of light and darkness has now started. There was darkness before, and the light then came in and caused a separation. Go ahead.
And Elohim saw the light, that it was good. And Elohim divided the light from the darkness.
So it was Yahweh that saw fit to divide the light from the darkness. Now this is physical darkness from physical light. There's also a separation between spiritual darkness and spiritual light. Go ahead.
And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day.
The evening and the morning were the first day. So the day starts at night. Go ahead.
And Elohim said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And Elohim made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And Elohim called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And Elohim said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together onto one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And Elohim called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so.
Right. So Yahweh, our Elohim, made the earth bearing seed. But corporations have patented seeds and say that they own them. Now you see why we are getting toward that time that Yahweh is going to have to render righteous judgment on the earth, because man has already puffed himself up against Yahweh's chosen people. They have been doing that for quite some time. But for corporations to decide that they now own Yahweh's seeds, now they have puffed up themselves against Yahweh. Go ahead.
And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind, and Elohim saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. And Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also.
Right. So consider, the light before that was his light. He was that light before. Okay? Now he has made two lights to rule, one to rule the day and one to rule the night. So there's a ruler over light and there's a ruler over darkness. Go ahead.
And Elohim set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good.
He saw that it was good, that there is a division between light and darkness, and Elohim saw that that was a good thing to do, to divide the light from the darkness. There is a ruler over the day, and there's a ruler over the night. Yeshua is the King of Kings. He is the ruler over the day, and the adversary, the devil, is the ruler of the night. Go ahead.
And the evening and the morning were the fourth day.
All right, now let's go to Isaiah chapter 14, and we're going to read verses 1 through 21. So now we see Yahweh in the beginning separated light from darkness. Now that is not just in a physical manner, that is in a spiritual manner as well. And we see that there was a ruler over light, a ruler over the darkness, And keep in mind when the adversary presented himself to Yahshua when he dwelt in a fleshly body, he said, all these things were given unto me, and I give them to whom I will. Well, who gave him that power? Yahweh did. Yahweh set a ruler over light and a ruler over darkness. So there is one that rules over goodness and one that rules over darkness. Isaiah chapter 14, and we're going to read verses 1 through 21. Go ahead.
You know, and with that said about the ruler of the darkness and the light, the day and the night, on the topic that we're touching on, All Hallows Eve.
Right. Right. So it's All Hallows Eve because it's the evening. It says the evening and the morning were the first day. And then the evening and the morning were the second day. So it starts in the evening, but it goes on to the next day. Well, All Hallows Eve is that evening. The next day is All Saints Day. This is their day that they are worshiping. Go ahead.
Verse 1. For Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joint with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob.
So, we are seeing this particular event that we're about to read about is also, it coincides with the redemption of the children of Israel. Go ahead.
And the people shall take them, and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors.
Right. And if the people in the land are Jews, you have to ask yourself, who will you take as captives? Because who held you as slaves? Document a slavery. They can't document a slavery. So, who? It says they shall take them captives whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. So you go back to Deuteronomy chapter 28, and no one on the earth fits that but this so-called African American. Go ahead.
And it shall come to pass in the day that Yahweh shall give you rest from your sorrow, and from your fear, and from the hard bondage wherein you was made to serve, that you shall take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how has the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Yahweh hath broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers.
Right. A scepter is the thing that the king has. All right. The adversary said, all of this is given unto me, and I give it to whom I will. Right? So then when you look at the kingdoms upon the earth, consider who moves those kingdoms. But understand, Yahweh still is the one who appointed the ruler over the day and the ruler over the night. Go ahead.
He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest, and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at you, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, whence you are laid down, no feller is come up against us. Or since you are laid down, no feller is come up against us. Hell from beneath is moved for you, to meet you at your coming. It stirreth up the dead for you, even all the chief ones of the earth. It has raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations.
Now consider, now we're talking about All Hallows Eve. Hell, which is the grave, from beneath is moved to meet you at your coming. It stirs up the dead for you. Okay? So understand, in this All Hallows Eve, who is being worshipped here? But the people believe, oh, this is just something fun for the kids and for them to get candy. Even all the chief ones of the earth, it has raised up. Now, we talked about a couple of weeks ago this enormous love for zombies. Now, zombies are supposed to be this walking dead, these people who have crawled out of their graves. Okay, now let's see who they're worshiping here. Go ahead.
All they shall speak and say unto you, are you also become weak as we? Are you become like unto us? Your pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of your viols, the worm is spread under you, and the worms cover you.
The worms cover you. Now they're coming out of the ground. See? Remember the whole Thriller, which is the most circulated video, the best of all time. Okay, it never stops playing, and the whole thing is about zombies. They're crawling out of their graves. In one part, a hand is moving before the body. Right. Go ahead.
How art you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?
Now, when it comes down and they're dealing with all of this coming out of the grave, it goes directly, how are you falling from heaven, O Lucifer? So now we see who's truly being worshiped on this day. Remember, before they started out hiding themselves from the souls, but now people dress up as the dead. So what dead entity, what causes all these dead to come out of their graves, and they're doing these things? But keep reading.
How art you cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of Elohim.
And this is why most people believe they're going to heaven, because that's where he wants his seat of authority. See, his seat of authority is not in heaven. His seat of authority is on earth. That doesn't mean that he's barred from going to heaven. We can read that in Job chapter 1 and Job chapter 2, that he has rights to come and go. But his place of authority is not there. That's why he said to Yahshua, it is given unto me, and I give it to whom I will. Worship me, and I'll give you all this stuff. Go ahead.
I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see you shall narrowly look upon you, and consider you, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the houses of his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house. But you are cast out of your grave like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet.
As a carcass trodden under feet. It says thrust through with the sword. Remember, part of the imagery of All Hallows Eve, you'll see people walking around. You seen the little hat? They had the knife going in one side and it comes out on the other side. It says a sword thrust through. Right. So understand, this is the open worship of Satan, but it's disguised. Go ahead.
You shall not be joined with them in burial, because you have destroyed your land and slain your people.
Lucifer has people. He got people. What he said is given unto me, and I give it to whom I will. So all those things that people say are blessings, who did you get those things from? Right. Lucifer has people. There were priests, and Yahshua said, you are of your father, the devil, and the works of your father you will do. Right. So you decide who your father is by the works that you do. Go ahead.
The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities.
Okay, so let's go now to Isaiah chapter 66. Chapter 66, and we're going to read verses 5 through 24. Now, do you have well, wait till you get to it. See if there's like a chapter heading on the
It says kingdom blessing.
Kingdom blessing on the top of Isaiah 66. We have to understand, a lot of people read things out of the New Testament and they say, well, that's the Old Testament, not understanding that there's a great majority of these things that have not happened yet. So you have to, mention that to people when they're dealing with these things. Isaiah chapter 66, and we're going to start that at verse 5, and we're going to read to verse 24.
Hear the word of Yahweh, you that tremble at his word. Your brethren that hated you, that cast you out for my name's sake, said, let Yahweh be glorified, but he shall appear to your joy, and you shall be ashamed. A voice of noise from the city, a voice from the temple, a voice of Yahweh that rendereth recompense to his enemies. Before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who hath heard such a thing?
Now this is speaking of Christ. But Christ hadn't came yet when this is written. See? But people don't understand. You can go in the Old Testament and hear all things about Yeshua. Go ahead.
Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Shall I bring to the birth, and not cause to bring forth, saith Yahweh? Shall I cause to bring forth, and shut the womb, saith your Elohim? Rejoice you with Jerusalem, and be glad with her, all you that love her. Rejoice for joy with her, all you that mourn for her, that you may suck and be satisfied with the breast of her consolations, that you may milk out and be delighted with the abundance of her glory. For thus saith Yahweh, behold, I will extend peace to her like a river, and the glory of the Gentiles like a flowing stream. Then shall you suck, you shall be borne upon her sides, and be dandled upon her knees. As one whom his mother comforteth, so will I comfort you, and you shall be comforted in Jerusalem. And when you see this, your heart shall rejoice, and your bones shall flourish like an herb, and the hand of Yahweh shall be known toward his servants, and his indignation toward his enemies. For behold, Yahweh will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire.
Right, but see, what's being taught is, oh, God is not angry with you. He has no reason to be angry. Right, but people won't do anything that's written in this book. But he said he's going to have loving kindness for his servants, but rebuke for his enemies. You decide whether or not he's your enemy or not based upon what you do concerning the things that are written in this book. Go ahead.
For by fire and by his sword will Yahweh plead with all flesh.
With all flesh. This is why people want to go zip-tang up to heaven. They want to avoid this right here. Yeah, that's for them. Go ahead.
And the slain of Yahweh shall be many. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination, and the mouse shall be consumed together, saith Yahweh.
Now this is kingdom blessings, and he's saying, we're talking a future event, and he's saying that those that eat that swine's flesh, the abomination and the mouse shall be consumed together. Most of all of the paganistic festivals that you have pushed in today's churches got that pig in it. Right. You think it's a coincidence that he mentioned this thing about swine's flesh? Everything that they have is decked out with a pig. When they got ready to tick us off, they sacrificed a pig on the altar. Go ahead.
Verse 18, for I know their works and their thoughts. It shall come, that I will gather all nations and tongues, and they shall come and see my glory. And I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape of them unto the nations, to Tarshish, Pul, and Lud, that draw the bow, to Tubal, and to Yavan, to the isles afar off, that have not heard my fame, neither have seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles. And they shall bring all your brethren for an offering unto Yahweh out of all nations upon horses, and in chariots, and in litters, and upon mules, and upon swift beasts, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, saith Yahweh, as the children of Israel bring an offering in a clean vessel into the house of Yahweh.
Right. The nations have had their part in spreading us to the four corners of the globe, and they're not going to have any peace in their land once Yahweh sets up and establishes us as his holy people. They're going to have to bring us home. Consider what it says in the Jubilee. You must return every man to his possession, so we understand what's going on. Go ahead.
And I will also take of them for priests and for Levites, saith Yahweh. For as the new heavens and new earth, which I will make,
which I will make a new heaven and a new earth. So if people don't understand that this is a future thing, we ain't never seen no new heaven and new earth. Okay, we're talking about a future event. Go ahead.
shall remain before me, saith Yahweh, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Shabbat to another.
Now, we just read that this is a future thing. So, future. Now, we seen in the New Testament, our people were still keeping the Sabbath. It's talking about a future event. And it says one new moon to another. Ask your average person who's been going to church 20 years, do y'all keep new moon? And they look at you like you are absolutely out of your mind. What is a new moon? I know what a full moon is. I don't know nothing about a new moon. Right. Then it says from one Sabbath to another. See, without keeping the new moon and the Sabbath, you couldn't possibly keep Pentecost, which is where the Spirit was poured out, which is where the gift of speaking in tongues was given out. Yet you find every preacher, when he think he really doing something, what is that? Right. He want the gift of speaking in tongues, but he ain't keeping the holy day where that gift was given out. Right. Try not going to work, but show up on check day and argue with them and say, I should get a check, but you didn't go to work. You didn't keep the days that go along with getting the blessing of a check. But you still want the check? Yeah, well, try your Honda then. See if that worked for you. Right. People want to play games. Yahweh going to show you what he think about them games. Go ahead, bro.
You mentioned that, they do know when the full moon is. And it's funny that whenever they do anything with the full moon, once again, it's also back to something satanic.
Right.
Yahweh told us to keep full new moons. They observe full moons along with satanic stuff.
Right. Right. Go ahead, bro.
I just wanted to go back to verse 21 where he says, I will also take for them for priests and for Levites. So that goes with that whole in Exodus earlier when he says you are a kingdom of priests.
Correct. Very correct, brother. It goes hand in hand. Go ahead.
Shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahweh. Verse 24. And they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses.
Listen, they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses. Those are dead bodies. Go ahead.
Of the men that have transgressed against me, for their worms shall not die.
So they dead, but they ain't dead? Oh, so they must be like zombies then. Oh, imagine that. That's peculiar. Go ahead, bro.
Neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be an abhorring unto all
And
flesh.
abhorring unto all flesh. Now you see this overwhelming love for the zombie. And who is this directly related to? The adversary, the devil. Now let's go to Revelation chapter 19. Revelation chapter 19, and we're going to read verses 19 through 21.
Verse 19. And I saw the beasts and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army.
Right, so Yeshua comes. Yeshua has his army, and the adversary, the devil, has his army. Where do you think he get his army from? Remember now, it's just talking about his people, right? So people are his people, but have no idea that they're his people. Right. Go ahead.
And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, that which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone.
Right. So the people saw miracles. They saw miracles. They received the mark. They believed in what miracles they had seen. And these are the people that, so they believe that they're doing right. See? They believe that they are following the right thing because they saw a miracle happen. Right. Go ahead.
Verse 21. And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeded out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh.
All the fowls were filled with their flesh. And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse. This is Yahshua that sits upon the horse. This is Yahshua, the words that proceed out of his mouth, and they are slain with that word. What do you think we're doing now? When you say the words that are contained in this book, people are getting angry with you. Right. It's his word that's going to slay them. His mouth, out of that proceeds the sword. Right. But let us hear the conclusion of this matter. Let's go to Revelation chapter 20. And we're going to start that at verse 1. So you have many people believing that, well, I'm not going to dress my kid up like a devil. What I'm going to do is my child going to be like a beautiful butterfly. See? So that's different. Right? Right. It's a butterfly from hell. You dressed your kid up to be a hell butterfly. Congratulations.
Revelations chapter 20 and verse 1. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand.
Now, we've talked about all of them coming out of their graves and things like that. And then understand, we also talked about purgatory, which was supposed to be this place of punishment, but it was supposed to be in the meantime. Remember? All right, go ahead.
And he laid hold on the dragon and that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years.
Now, go back to the beginning. It said this All Hallows Eve was the day that the dead were able to wreak vengeance on their enemies. And they did it this one night. Okay? Read.
And cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season.
Okay, so he was in the grave, but he's coming out of the grave after 1,000 years. See, this is the spiritual Sabbath. This is the sabbatical kingdom. The reason it shall be peace is because he shall be locked up, the adversary, the devil. He shall be locked up in his purgatory. And he won't be able to deceive the nations. So we understand part of this whole thing was to go and remember what we read in the opening about gathering these cakes for those in purgatory. So they offering up little thing. You know what we call it? Somebody get locked up. Hey man, come put something on my books. I need some snacks in here. Right. They doing it for their father, the adversary, the devil. Go ahead.
Verse 4. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahshua, and for the word of Elohim, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with the Messiah 1,000 years.
They're not in heaven. But see, this is what's taught by 99.99999% of congregations, that they all go into heaven. But here's Christ on earth, and he's reigning for 1,000 years. Where they at? Right. Go ahead.
But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection.
Ask somebody to say their mama or they loved one in heaven, and ask them about the first resurrection. If they don't look at you like you crazy, they're going to attack you. Right. Antichrist. See, this is what Christ has set up. But when you mention the things that Christ has set up, you become Antichrist, because people are completely loyal to the wrong things. Loyalty is a very, very good attribute to have. But when you're loyal to all the wrong things, hey, the person that's in a gang is loyal. He's so loyal, he'll kill somebody else that has on a different color shirt and feel justified. Right. What do you think they're going to do to you? Go ahead.
Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death has no power, but they shall be priests of Elohim and of the Mashiach, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison.
So, after the 1,000 years, he's loosed out of his prison. All Hallows Eve, he now has the opportunity to gain vengeance against his enemies. Wow, imagine that. Keep reading.
And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about.
So we now see he comes out that night, and then he makes war to gain vengeance against his enemies. Who are his enemies? The saints of Yahweh. Go ahead.
And the beloved city. And fire came down from Elohim out of heaven and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever.
Here go your zombies who are enduring punishment but can't die. Go ahead.
And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Elohim, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works.
Right, according to your works. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Elohim, and the books, plural, were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. The book of life, these are the things. Here's the book of life. Okay? We got the book of life, and then you got the books of your dealings. And then we're going to have a righteous accounting going on. See, this is Yahweh's accountant. This is what's written in the book of life. This is what you did. This is what's written in the book of life. This is what you did. This is where it says you were supposed to keep the Sabbath day. This is what you did. This is where it says you were supposed to keep my holy days. These are the days you kept the day of the dead. It says he is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. Oh, now that's an interesting statement. So then who's the God of the dead? Right. They just worshiped him on All Hallows Eve. His name is Satan. Read, bro.
Verse 13. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works.
Right. So there were still dead people. They coming out of the sea. They coming out of the ground. Where all them people that said they was in heaven? You ain't seen none of them coming out, and then they came out of heaven for judgment. No, somebody telling a lie. But since we like the lie, we allow the lie to be told to us because it makes us feel warm and cozy inside. See? A good lie make people write a better and a bigger, fatter, robust check. You understand? See? I told a whole bunch of sweet lies, man. I wouldn't have to go to work. I'd be the richest cat in town. But I'm going to preach what's in this book. I'm going to teach what's in this book. And if that means I got to have 3 jobs, that's what I got to have. But I know I got a reward coming at the end. Go ahead.
Verse 14. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire.
So let that be a understanding. Let this the people hear what the Spirit says unto the churches, that these things are a vexation unto Yahweh our Elohim, that we keep these festivals, that they have remade and reformed into something other than what it is. It is the open worship of the adversary, the devil. People have tried to clean these things up by, okay, we're not going to dress up like the dead anymore. We're going to do these things, and instead of letting our kids roam the streets, we're going to have it in the church, right? You brought the festival of the dead right into the church. And Yahweh, when he brings Yahshua that second time, he left as a lamb, but he is coming back as a lion. He is not coming here to be slayed again. He've already been slayed. He has already offered up his blood. This time, he's coming to shed blood. So, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.